Hope everyone had a good Gayatri break. We're taking up at the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 18, the battle between Lord Boar and Hiraṇyākṣa. And we left off at 10, so we're taking up at 11. Certainly we have stolen the charge of the inhabitants of Rasatala and have lost all shame. Although bitten by your powerful mace, I shall stay here in the water for some time, because having created enmity with a powerful enemy, I now have no place to go. Purport: the demons should have known that God cannot be driven out of any place, for he is all-pervading. Demons think of their possessions as their property, but actually everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can take anything at any time he likes. I thought it goes to the answer to that question of how grihastas would be free from fears. Ishavasamidam sarvam. You are supposed to be the commander of many foot soldiers, and now you may take prompt steps to overthrow us. Give up all your foolish talk and wipe out the cares of your kith and kin by slaying us. One may be proud, yet he does not deserve a seat in an assembly if he fails to fulfill his promised word. A demon may be a great soldier and commander of a great number of infantry, but in the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is powerless and is destined to die. The Lord therefore challenged the demon not to go away, but to fulfill his promised word to kill him. Sri Maitreya said, the demon, being thus challenged by the Personality of Godhead, became angry and agitated, and he trembled in anger like a challenged cobra. Purport: a cobra is very fierce before ordinary persons, but before an enchanter who can play with him, he is a plaything. Similarly, a demon may be very powerful in his own domain, but before the Lord he is insignificant. The demon Ravana was a fierce figure before the demigods, but when he was before Lord Ramachandra, he trembled and prayed to his deity, Lord Shiva, but to no avail. 14. Hissing indignantly, all his senses shaken by wrath, the demon quickly sprang upon the Lord and dealt him a blow with his powerful mace. The Lord, however, by moving slightly aside, dodged the violent mace blow aimed at his breast by the enemy, just as an accomplished yogi would elude death. The example is given here that the perfect yogi can overcome a death blow, although it is offered by the laws of nature. It is useless for a demon to beat the transcendental body of the Lord with a powerful mace, for no one can surpass his prowess. Those who are advanced transcendentalists are freed from the laws of nature, and even a death blow cannot act on them. Superficially, it may be seen that a yogi is attacked by a death blow, but by the grace of the Lord, he can overcome many such attacks for the service of the Lord. As the Lord exists by his own independent prowess, by the grace of the Lord, the devotees also exist for his service. The Personality of Godhead now exhibited his anger and rushed to meet the demon, who bit his lip in rage, took up his mace again, and began to repeatedly brandish it about. Then, with his mace, the Lord struck the enemy on the right of his brow. But since the demon was expert in fighting, O gentle Vidura, he protected himself by a maneuver of his own mace. In this way, the demon Hiraṇyākṣa and the Lord, the Personality of Godhead, struck each other with their huge maces, each enraged and seeking his own victory. Hiraṇyākṣa is another name for Hiraṇyākṣa, the demon. There was keen rivalry between the two combatants. Both had sustained injuries on their bodies from the blows of each other's pointed maces, and each grew more and more enraged at the smell of blood on his person. In their eagerness to win, they performed maneuvers of various kinds, and their contest looked like an encounter between two forceful bulls for the sake of a cow. Here the earth planet is called Ila. This earth was formerly known as Ilavrita-varsha, and when Maharaj Parikshit ruled the earth, it was called Bhartavarsha. Actually, Bhartavarsha is the name for the entire planet, but gradually Bhartavarsha has come to mean India, as India has recently been divided into Pakistan and India, in Hindustan. Similarly, the earth was formerly called Ilavrita-varsha, but gradually, as time passed, it was divided by national boundaries. O descendant of Kuru, Brahmā, the most independent demigod of the universe, accompanied by his followers, came to see the terrible fight for the sake of the world between the demon and the Personality of Godhead, who appeared in the form of a boar. Purport: the fight between the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the demon is compared to a fight between bulls for the sake of a cow. The earth planet is also called Go, or cow. As bulls fight between themselves to ascertain who will have union with a cow, there is always a constant fight between the demons and the Supreme Lord, or his representative, for supremacy over the earth. Here the Lord is significantly described as Yagyava. One should not consider the Lord to have the body of an ordinary boar. He can assume any form, and he possesses all such forms eternally. It is from him that all other forms have emanated. This boar form is not to be considered the form of an ordinary hog. His body is actually full of yagya, or worshipable offerings. Yagya, sacrifices, are offered to Vishnu. Yagya means the body of Vishnu. His body is not material, therefore he should not be taken to be an ordinary boar. Brahmā is described in this verse as Swarat. Actually, full independence is exclusive to the Lord himself, but as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, every living entity has a minute quantity of independence. Each and every one of the living entities within this universe has this minute independence. But Brahmā, being the chief of all living entities, has a greater potential of independence than any other. He is the representative of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and has been assigned to preside over universal affairs. All other demigods work for him. Therefore, he is described here as Swarat. He is always accompanied by great sages and transcendentalists, all of whom came to see the bullfight between the demon and the Lord. After arriving at the place of combat, Brahmā, the leader of thousands of sages and transcendentalists, saw the demon who had attained such unprecedented power that no one could fight with him. Brahmā then addressed Narayan, who was assuming the form of a boar for the first time. Lord Brahmā said, "My dear Lord, this demon has proved to be a constant pinprick to the demigods, the Brahmins, the cows, and innocent persons who are spotless and always dependent upon worshipping your lotus feet. He has become a source of fear by unnecessarily harassing them. Since he has attained a boon from me, he has become a demon, always searching for a proper combatant, wandering all over the universe for this infamous purpose." Purport: there are two classes of living entities. One is called Sura, or the demigods, and the other is called Asura, or the demons. Demons are generally fond of worshipping the demigods, and there are evidences that by such worship they get extensive power for their sense gratification. This latter proves to be a cause of trouble to the Brahmanas, demigods, and other innocent living entities. Demons habitually find fault with the demigods, Brahmanas, and innocents. Brahmanas and innocent. Demons habitually find fault with the demigods, Brahmanas, and innocent. Is that what it says there?
Yeah.
Should be innocence with a TS. Or the innocent. Anyway, you can't change anything. To whom They are a constant source of fear. The way of the demon is to take power from the demigods and then tease the demigods themselves. There is an instance of a great devotee of Lord Shiva who obtained a boon from Lord Shiva that the head of whomever he touched with his hand would come off its trunk. As soon as the boon was offered to him, the demon wanted to touch the very head of Lord Shiva. This is their way. The devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead do not, however, ask any favor for sense gratification. Even if they are offered liberation, they refuse it. They are happy simply engaging in the trance of loving service of the Lord. Lord Brahmā continued, "My dear Lord, there is no need to play with this serpentine demon, who is always very skilled in conjuring tricks and is arrogant, self-sufficient, and most wicked." Purport: no one is unhappy when a serpent is killed. It is a practice among village boys to catch a serpent by the tail and play with it for some time and then kill it. Similarly, the Lord could have killed the demon at once, but he played with him in the same way as a child plays with a snake before killing it. Brahmā requested, however, that since the demon was more wicked and undesirable than a serpent, there was no need to play with him. It was his wish that he be killed at once without delay. Brahmā continued, "My dear Lord, you are infallible. Please kill this sinful demon before the demoniac hour arrives and he presents another formidable approach favorable to him. You can kill him by your internal potency without doubt. My Lord, the darkest evening which covers the world is fast approaching. Since you are the soul of all souls, kindly kill him and win victory for the demigods." The auspicious period known as Abhijit, which is most opportune for victory, commenced at midday and has all but passed. Therefore, in the interest of your friends, please dispose of this formidable foe quickly. This demon, luckily for us, has come of his own accord to you, his death ordained by you. Therefore, exhibiting your ways, kill him in the duel and establish the worlds in peace. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 18th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Battle Between Lord Boar and the Demon Hiraṇyākṣa. Bravo! Bravissimo! Sadhu, sadhu, jai, jai! Hiraṇyākṣa means gold eye, gold eye. Gold eye. Yeah, it sounds like a James Bond thing. Sri Maitreya said, chapter 19, the killing of the demon Hiraṇyākṣa. After hearing the words of Brahmā, the creator, which were free from all sinful purposes, and as sweet as nectar, the Lord heartily laughed and accepted his prayer with a glance laden with love. The word nirvyalika is very significant. Nirvyalika. The prayers of the demigods or devotees of the Lord are free from all sinful purposes, but the prayers of demons are always filled with sinful purposes. The demon Hiraṇyākṣa became powerful by deriving a boon from Brahmā, and after attaining that boon, he created a disturbance because of his sinful intentions. The prayers of Brahmā and other demigods are not to be compared to the prayers of the demons. Their purpose is to please the Supreme Lord. Therefore the Lord smiled and accepted the prayer to kill the demon. Demons who are never interested in praising the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they have no information of him go to the demigods. And in the Bhagavad-gītā, this is condemned. Persons who go to the demigods and pray for advancement in sinful activities are considered to be bereft of intelligence. Demons have lost all intelligence because they do not know what is actually their self-interest. Even if they have information of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they decline to approach him. It is not possible for them to get their desired boons from the Supreme Lord because their purposes are always sinful. It is said that the dacoits in Bengal used to worship the goddess Kali for fulfillment of their sinful desires, to plunder others' property. But they never went to a Vishnu temple because they might have been unsuccessful in praying to Vishnu. Therefore, the prayers of the demigods or the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are always untinged by sinful purposes. The Lord who had appeared from the nostril of Brahmā sprang and aimed his mace at the chin of his enemy, the Hiraṇyākṣa demon, who was stalking fearlessly before him. Struck by the demon's mace, however, the Lord's mace slipped from his hand and looked splendid as it fell down whirling. This was miraculous, for the mace was blazing wonderful. I know, right? It says wonderful here. Can't change it. Even though the demon had an excellent opportunity to strike his unarmed foe without obstruction, he respected the law of single combat, thereby kindling the fury of the Supreme Lord. As the Lord's mace fell to the ground and a cry of alarm arose from the witnessing crowd of gods and rishis, the Personality of Godhead acknowledged the demon's love of righteousness and therefore invoked his Sudarshan discus. As the discus began to revolve in the Lord's hands, and the Lord contended at close quarters with the chief of his Vaikuntha attendants, who had been born as Hiraṇyākṣa, a vile son of Diti, there issued from every direction strange expressions uttered by those who were witnessing from airplanes. They had no knowledge of the Lord's reality, and they cried, "May victory attend you! Pray, dispatch him! Play no more with him!" When the demon saw the Personality of Godhead, who had eyes just like lotus petals, standing in position before him, armed with his Sudarshan discus, his senses were overpowered by indignation. He began to hiss like a serpent, and he bit his lip in great resentment. The demon, who had fearful tusks, stared at the Personality of Godhead as though to burn him. Springing in the air, he aimed his mace at the Lord, exclaiming at the same time, "You are slain!" O saintly Vidura, while his enemy looked on, the Lord in his boar form, the enjoyer of all sacrificial offerings, playfully knocked down the mace with his left foot, even as it came upon him with the force of a tempest. The Lord then said, "Take up your weapon and try again, eager as you are to conquer me." Challenged by these words, the demon aimed his mace at the Lord and once more loudly roared. When the Lord saw the mace flying towards him, he stood firmly where he was and caught it with the same ease as Garuda, the king of birds, would seize a serpent. His valor thus frustrated, the great demon felt humiliated and was put out of countenance. He was reluctant to take back the mace when it was offered by the Personality of Godhead. He now took a trident, which was as rapacious as a flaming fire, and hurled it against the Lord, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, even as one would use penance for a malevolent purpose against a holy Brahmin. Hurled by the mighty demon with all his strength, the flying trident shone brightly in the sky. The Personality of Godhead, however, tore it to pieces with his discus Sudarshana, which had a sharp-edged rim, even as Indra cut off a wing of Garuda. The context of the reference given herein regarding Garuda and Indra is this. Once upon a time, Garuda, the carrier of the Lord, snatched away a nectar pot from the hands of the demigods in heaven in order to liberate his mother, Vinata, from the clutches of his stepmother, Kadru, the mother of the serpents. On learning this, Indra, the king of heaven, hurled his thunderbolt against Garuda. With a view to respect the infallibility of Indra's weapon, Garuda, though otherwise invincible, being the Lord's own mount, dropped one of his wings, which was shattered to pieces by the thunderbolt. The inhabitants of higher planets are so sensible that even in the process of fighting, they observe the preliminary rules and regulations of gentleness. In this case, Garuda wanted to show respect for Indra, since he knew that Indra's weapon must destroy something. He offered his wing. The demon was enraged when his trident was cut to pieces by the discus of the Personality of Godhead. He therefore advanced toward the Lord and, roaring aloud, struck his hard fist against the Lord's broad chest, which bore the mark of Srivasa. Then he went out of sight. Purport. Srivasa is a curl of white hair on the chest of the Lord, which is a special sign of his being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Vaikuntha Loka or in Goloka Vrindavan, the inhabitants are exactly of the same form as the Personality of Godhead, but by this Srivasa mark on the chest of the Lord, he is distinguished from all others. Hit in this manner by the demon, O Vidura, the Lord who had appeared as the first boar did not feel the least quaking in any part of his body, any more than an elephant would when struck with a wreath of flowers. As previously explained, the demon was originally a servitor of the Lord in Vaikuntha, but somehow or other he fell as a demon. His fight with the Supreme Lord was meant for his liberation. The Lord enjoyed the striking on his transcendental body just like a fully grown-up father fighting with his child. Sometimes a father takes pleasure in having a mock fight with his small child. And similarly, the Lord felt Hiraṇyākṣa striking his body to be like flowers offered for worship. In other words, the Lord desired to fight in order to enjoy his transcendental bliss. Therefore, he enjoyed the attack. The demon, however, employed many conjuring tricks against the Personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of Yogamaya. At the sight of this, the people were filled with alarm and thought that the dissolution of the universe was near. Purport. The fighting enjoyment of the Supreme Lord with his devotee, who had been converted into a demon, appeared severe enough to bring about the dissolution of the universe. This is the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the wavering of his little finger appears to be a great and very dangerous movement in the eyes of the inhabitants of the universe. Fierce winds began to blow from all directions, spreading darkness occasioned by dust and hailstorms. Stones came in volleys from every corner as if thrown by machine guns. The luminaries in outer space disappeared due to the skies being overcast with masses of clouds, which were accompanied by lightning and thunder. The sky rained pus, hair, blood, stool, urine, and bones. As sinless Vidura, O sinless Vidura, mountains discharged weapons of various kinds, and naked demonesses, armed with tridents, appeared with their hair hanging loose. Cruel and savage slogans uttered by hosts of ruffian yakshas and rakshasas, who all either marched on foot or rode on horses, elephants, or chariots. The Lord, the personal enjoyer of all sacrifices, now discharged his beloved Sudarshan, which is capable of dispelling the magical forces displayed by the demons. Even famous yogis and demons can sometimes enact very magical feats by their mystic power. But in the presence of the Sudarshan chakra, when it is let loose by the Lord, all such magical jugglery is dispensed. The instance of the quarrel between Durvasa Muni and Maharaj Ambarish is a practical example of this in this matter. Durvasa Muni wanted to display many magical wonders, but when the Sudarshan chakra appeared, Durvasa himself was afraid and fled to various planets for his personal protection. The Lord is described here as Tripad, which means that he is the enjoyer of three kinds of sacrifices. In Bhagavad-gītā, the Lord confirms that he is the beneficiary and enjoyer of all sacrifices, penances, and austerities. The Lord is the enjoyer of three kinds of yajna. As further described in Bhagavad-gītā, there are sacrifices of goods, sacrifices of meditation, and sacrifices of philosophical speculation. Those on the paths of jnana, yoga, and karma all have to come in the end to the Supreme Lord, because Vasudeva Sarvamiti, the Supreme Lord is the ultimate enjoyer of everything. That is the perfection of all sacrifice. At that very moment, a shudder suddenly ran through the heart of Diti, the mother of Hiraṇyākṣa. She recalled the words of her husband Kashyapa, and blood flowed from her breasts. At Hiraṇyākṣa's last moment, his mother Diti remembered what her husband had said. Although her sons would be demons, they would have the advantage of being killed by the personality of Godhead himself. She remembered this incident by the grace of the Lord, and her breast flowed blood instead of milk. In many instances, we find that when a mother is moved by affection for her sons, milk flows from her breast. In the case of the demon's mother, the blood could not transform into milk, but it flowed down her breast as it was. Blood transforms into milk. To drink milk is auspicious, but to drink blood is inauspicious. Although they are one and the same thing. This formula is applicable in the case of cow's milk also. When the demon saw his magic forces dispelled, he at once again came into the presence of the personality of Godhead Keshava, and full of rage tried to embrace him within his arms to crush him. But to his great amazement, he found the Lord standing outside the circle of his arms. In this verse, the Lord is addressed as Keshava because he killed the demon Keshi in the beginning of creation. Keshava is also the name of Krishna. Krishna is the origin of all incarnations. And it is confirmed in Brahmā Samhita that Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, exists simultaneously in his different incarnations and expansions. The demon's attempt to measure the Supreme Personality of Godhead is significant. The demon wanted to embrace him with his arms, thinking that with his limited arms he could capture the Absolute by material power. He did not know that God is the greatest of the great and the smallest of the small. No one can capture the Supreme Lord or bring him under his control. But the demoniac person always attempts to measure the length and breadth of the Supreme Lord. By his inconceivable potency, the Lord can become the universal form, as explained in Bhagavad-gītā, and at the same time he can remain within the box of his devotees as their worshipable deity. There are many devotees who keep a statue of the Lord in a small box and carry it with them everywhere. Every morning they worship the Lord in the box. The Supreme Lord Keshava, or the personality of Godhead Krishna, is not bound by any measurement of our calculation. He can remain with his devotee in any suitable form. Yet he is unapproachable by any amount of demoniac activities. The demon now began to strike the Lord with his hard fists, but Lord Adhokshaja slapped him in the root of his ear, even as Indra, the Lord of the Maruts, hit the demon Ritra. The Lord is explained here to be Adhokshaja, beyond the reach of all material calculation. Akshaja means the measurement of our senses, and Adhokshaja means that which is beyond the measurement of our senses. Though struck indifferently by the Lord, the conqueror of all, the demon's body began to wheel. His eyeballs bulged out of their sockets, his arms and legs broken, and the hair in his head scattered. He fell down dead, like a gigantic tree uprooted by the wind. Eva, Jai, Jai. Purport, it does not take even a moment for the Lord to kill any powerful demon, including Hiraṇyākṣa, the Lord could have killed him long before, but he allowed the demon to display the full extent of his magical feats. One may know that by magical feats, by scientific advancement of knowledge, or by material power, one cannot become the equal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As one signal is sufficient to destroy all our attempts. His inconceivable power, as displayed here, is so strong that the demon, despite all his demoniac maneuvers, was killed by the Lord when the Lord desired, simply by one slap. Aja, Brahmā, and others arrived on the spot to see the fearfully tusked demon lying on the ground, biting his lip. The glow of his face was yet unfaded, and Brahmā admiringly said, "Oh, who could meet such blessed death?" Although the demon was dead, his bodily luster was unfaded. This is very peculiar because when a man or animal is dead, the body immediately becomes pale, the luster gradually fades, and decomposition takes place. But here, although Hiraṇyākṣa lay dead, his bodily luster was unfaded because the Lord, the Supreme Spirit, was touching his body. One's bodily luster remains fresh only as long as the spirit soul is present. Although the demon's soul had departed his body, the Supreme Spirit touched the body, and therefore his bodily luster did not fade. The individual soul is different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead when he quits his body is certainly very fortunate. And therefore, personalities like Brahmā and the other demigods eulogize the death of the demon. Brahmā continued, "He was struck by a forefoot of the Lord, whom yogis, seeking freedom from their unreal material bodies, meditate upon in seclusion and mystic trance. While gazing on his countenance, this crest jewel of Diti's sons has cast off his mortal coil." Purport. The process of yoga is very clearly described in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is said here that the ultimate end of the yogi and mystics who perform meditation is to get rid of this material body. Therefore, they meditate in secluded places to attain yogic trance. Yoga has to be performed in a secluded place, not in public or in a demonstration on stage, as nowadays practiced by many so-called yogis. Real yoga aims at ridding one of the material body. Yoga practice is not intended to keep the body fit and young. Such advertisements of so-called yoga are not approved by any standard method. Particularly mentioned in this verse is the word yam, or unto whom, indicating that meditation should be targeted on the Personality of Godhead. Even if one concentrates his mind on the Boar form of the Lord, that is also yoga. As confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā, one who concentrates his mind constantly in meditation upon the Personality of Godhead in one of his many varieties of forms is the first-class yogi. And he can very easily attain trance simply by meditating upon the form of the Lord. If one is able to continue such meditation on the Lord's form at the time of one's death, one is liberated from this mortal body and is transferred to the kingdom of God. This opportunity was given to the demon by the Lord, and therefore Brahmā and other demigods were astonished. In other words, the perfection of yoga practice can be attained by a demon also if he is simply kicked by the Lord. These two personal assistants of the Supreme Lord, having been cursed, have been destined to take birth in demoniac families. After a few such births, they will return to their own positions. Text 30. The demigods address the Lord, "All obeisances unto you. You are the enjoyer of all sacrifices, and you have assumed the form of a boar in pure goodness for the purpose of maintaining the world. Fortunately for us, this demon who is a torment to the worlds, has been slain by you, and we too, O Lord, are now at ease in devotion to your lotus feet. Now we'll take a few reflections or questions. Yes, Krishna Saka Prabhu.
Guru Maharaj, you that the demigods they have to give the benediction, something like that, because like austerity is like tax, and they have to, even Radhika Raman Prabhu said it is a contractual obligation, and he quoted the third Bhagavad-gītā's third chapter verse. My question was regarding to that, like if it is a contractual obligation, in the 7th canto, I think Lord says to Brahma, don't give those boons. So how do...
He just want to give a little adjustment.
Sorry.
It was a yearly review. And during his yearly review, he told him to cool it a little bit.
One more question. Yeah, it is said Lord was pained by the words of Hiraṇyākṣa. So it is also recommended that just be in contact with the Lord in anger or in lust or in whatever, or Shishupal also was and he was saying cursed words to Krishna. So, but we see that Lord is pained by those words. Then why would it be said in the Bhagavatam that be in touch with Krishna if it is like in those ways, if it is cursed, if he is pained by those?
He's an unlimited personality, and he takes the least qualification of the person and gives them the highest benediction. What's more, his anger isn't the kind of anger that conditioned souls experience, where they lose their judgment. And the life of conditioned soul, the more emotion goes up, the more reasoning goes down. But the Lord has full faculty of reasoning at every moment. And when he becomes angry, it's an emotion that he expresses out of compassion. That's expressed when Sankarshan, at the end of the universe, before he destroys it, starts thinking about his purpose for the universe and how many people, practically nobody, took advantage of it. So he becomes a little annoyed. And that's out of a sense of compassion. So the Lord's all good. Even when he becomes angry, even within that anger, he's still thinking of the ultimate benefit of the living entity. It's not like a conditioned soul who thinks, oh, I hate this person. There's no icha dvesha for the Lord. He's still samaham sarvabhuteshu, but God's a person too. So he's the source of all these emotions. But the way he experiences is different, just like the sun rays on the sun. Sun experiences sun rays differently than we do. We have to wear a hat so we don't get cancer. Well, you don't probably, but I do. 1, 2. I'm looking outside just in case, 2. 3. Julie, I think. I can tell from the effulgence of the smile and nothing else. Go ahead.
I just have a small comment. I thought it was interesting that some of the people who are watching the battle from their airplanes, it says that they were saying, pray dispatch him. And it says that they had no knowledge of the Lord's reality. And that was interesting.
Yeah, it makes it interesting, right?
Hare Krishna.
It's Prabhupada Priya, then we're going to Bamsuli.
I have 2 questions. So the first one is that we know that the Lord's body is completely transcendental and spiritual, and that spirit cannot be affected by matter. And yet we see that the blows of Hiraṇyākṣa's maces on the spiritual body of the Lord are causing blood to flow and such. And we see that in different leelas of the Lord. So how is that possible?
Oh, everything's possible. It's not, his body's unlimited, and it's there for anandamayo abhyasat, for his ultimate enjoyment. So it transforms according to the rasa. Like when he gets, as you were alluding to, gets shot by Bhishma, there's a way that the wounds there are an expression of vira ras, and also that reciprocation with Bhima. It's all in the mode of giving the devotee pleasure, as he did with Bhishma. He wanted to give Bhishma that pleasure of the warrior exchange, that the Lord took those, and then he showed it to him, so he pleases his devotees by his bodily transformations.
Like ecstatic symptoms.
Ecstatic symptoms.
And then the other question is, I'm assuming that there were little people on the earth when all this was going on, right? It was full of living entities.
Yeah.
So how did they survive being submerged in the ocean and being...
Well, everything's the Lord's arrangement. And if you think to the way in which all the residents of Mathura, right after that incident took place, when Jarasandha came, and then there was this other character who we were talking about this morning, Kalyavana. Everybody showed up all at the same time, and Krishna said, enough's enough. So then all of them, that when they went to bed at night, they were in Mathura. When they woke up, they were in golden palaces in the middle of the ocean. So if he can do that, in fact, even if you step back one level, and I think Prabhupada mentioned it there in that context, how's he making the planets float in the first place? You know, you got seas and oceans, little deer prancing around, and it's spinning, you know, tens of thousands of miles an hour, and everyone's la-di-da-di-da. And, you know, how's he doing that? It's all his inconceivable potency.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, Vamshuli.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
And then Devavrata.
This is almost like a mandatory mention that the demons try to capture Lord Krishna. Here, like Hiraṇyākṣa is trying to capture Varahadev, but they cannot. And at the same time, the devotees like Yashoda Maya, they are capturing Krishna by their love. In this Damodar month, I just wanted to remember and mention that point. Pure devotees can capture the Lord.
Krishna saw the perspiration on her brow and thought, and he felt compassion for her. Then he allowed her to tie him up. And as you know well, just for the sake of mentioning it, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, the 2 inches short of the rope. First is the devotee's endeavor, and the second is Krishna's mercy, seeing the devotee's endeavors. So Vishwanath says both things have to be there. Devavrata?
Hare Krishna, I found about 11 verses in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita regarding this question that I think Madhava had.
Yes.
Prabhu had.
You're in luck, Madhava. We hit the jackpot.
Would you like to read it? I can bring it for you.
Sure. You want to restate your question while he's on the way in here? And then we'll close it with this, because it's time for a little break. Thank you very much. It was very thoughtful of you. Okay. All right. Your question, sir?
That in the last verse of chapter 17, Varuna tells Hiraṇyākṣa, it is in order to exterminate wicked fellows like you and to show his grace to the virtuous that he assumes his various incarnations like Varaha. So how did he know that Varaha is going to kill him, and how did he know Varaha? Or is Varaha it's like an expansion of Krishna, as there eternally?
I'll read the verses and let's see if it solves. If it doesn't answer the question.
This is just discussing the various
Okay.
times and differences between the two.
All right. Devavrata's giving a disclaimer. He said he's not sure if it'll answer it, but at least it'll build more context And we'll keep doing research if it doesn't. Text 8. Sri Varaha is described in the first canto, 137. The supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices accepted the incarnation of a boar, the second incarnation, for the welfare of the earth, and he lifted the earth from the nether regions of the universe. Should I be reading the commentary too? According to Sri Vishnu Dharmottara Purana, Lord Varaha lifted the earth from the Rasatala region because it had fallen from its regular place during the flood of universal devastation. And in second canto, when the unlimitedly powerful Lord assumed the form of a boar as a pastime just to lift the planet Earth, which was drowned in the great ocean of the universe called Garbhodak, the first demon Hiraṇyākṣa appeared, and the Lord pierced him with his tusk. This verse poetically says that the Lord assumed the form of Varaha. The complete picture is that his form of Varaha exists eternally in Vaikuntha and appears as an avatar at certain times and places in the material creation. Sri Brihat Bhagavatamrita mentions that Lord Varaha is present within the shell of elemental earth that surrounds the universe, where the goddess Bhumi worships him with incomparable opulence. In the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Maitreya tells Vidura about the Varaha avatar, and in the fifth canto, Shukadeva describes how Bhumi Devi worships Lord Varaha in the Uttarakuru region of Jambudweep. You feeling happier? He appeared twice in this day of Brahma. He first appeared during the reign of Swayambhuva, the first Manu. He came out from the nostril of Lord Brahma and raised the earth planet from the lower regions of the universe. That supreme among tusked animals appeared again during the reign of Chakshusha Manu. At that time, while lifting up the earth, he came out from the universal waters to kill Hiraṇyākṣa. Sri Varaha has 4 legs, but sometimes he is understood to have a form as half man, half boar. The first of these 2 Varaha appearances is described in the Bhagavatam's first canto, and the second is described in the second canto. Both of these Varaha incarnations, as well as 2 Lord Matsya avatars, appeared during this first day, the Brahmakalpa, of Brahma's current month, occurring during the beginning of his 51st year. The first Lord Varaha appeared during the Swayambhuva Manvantar, when he came out from Lord Brahma's nostril and lifted the earth. The second Lord Varaha appeared during the reign of Chakshusha Manu, when he came from within the universal water, lifted the earth, and killed Hiraṇyākṣa. Lord Varaha is portrayed with a half-human, half-boar form in the Padma Purana and other texts. Sometimes he is dark blue like a rain cloud, and sometimes white like the moon. These are the 2 colors the scriptures attribute to that mighty personification of Vedic sacrifice. The Varaha of Swayambhuva Manvantar is dark blue, and the other Varaha is white. That's going to be on the test. We hear from scriptures how Daksha, son, up to which number? What? We hear from scriptures how Daksha, son of the Prachetas, repopulated the universe during the 6th Manvantar. From this account, it is reasonable to conclude that Hiraṇyākṣa was born during that period. As stated in the 4th canto, Daksha's previous body had been destroyed, but inspired by the Supreme Will, he created all the desired living entities in the Chakshusha Manvantar. The previously quoted verse from the 2nd canto describing Lord Varaha's second appearance mentions neither the Chakshusha Manvantar as the time nor the water of devastation as the source of his advent. How do we know then to distinguish this Varaha as a separate appearance? Evidence is found in the 4th canto. Previously, the Supreme Lord had arranged for Daksha to be killed because of his offenses against Lord Shiva and Sati. The Lord then gave Daksha a new body in the Chakshusha Manvantar and inspired him to repopulate the universe. The Prachetas were descendants of Uttanapada, and Daksha was their son. Hiraṇyākṣa was the son of Diti, a daughter of Dakshas. In the beginning of Brahma's day, Manu did not yet have any offspring, so how could Daksha, son of the Prachetas, be present? And how then could Diti, or Diti's son, be present? Here is proof that Hiraṇyākṣa and the avatar of Varaha who killed him appeared not in the Swayambhuva Manu, but later in the Chakshusha Manvantara. There is no evidence that Swayambhuva Manu's sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapada, or daughters Akuti, Devahuti, and Prasuti, had children of their own during Swayambhuva Manu's reign as Manu. There is evidence, however, that the Prachetas were descendants of Uttanapada, that Daksha was the son of the Prachetas, that Diti was the daughter of Daksha, and that Hiraṇyākṣa was the son of Diti and her husband Kashyapa. It is thus not possible that Hiraṇyākṣa, born 18 generations, more than 1 billion years after Uttanapada, could have been killed by the Lord Varaha who appeared at the beginning of the Kalpa. We thus conclude that Sri Varaha enacts his pastimes at 2 different times, and that Maitreya combined incidents from both of the histories in his answer to Vidura's questions. In the initial narration of Lord Varaha's appearance in the 3rd canto, Maitreya Muni did not distinguish between the 2 Varahas, even though he described incidents from the pastimes of both of them. In the 13th chapter of that canto, Maitreya described how Lord Varaha lifted the earth out of the Garbha ocean. He mentioned in texts 31 and 32 of that chapter that Varahadev also easily disposed of a demon who attacked him when he came out of the water. At the beginning of the 14th chapter, Vidura asked to hear more about the killing of this demon, whom he identified as Hiraṇyākṣa. Some Puranas mention an annihilation of the universe that occurs in the middle of a Manvantar because of Manus being cursed by a sage. This exceptional occurrence, last verse, happened during the reign of Chakshusha Manu. At other times, Lord Padmanabha has personally enacted the pastime of universal annihilation. It may be asked why Lord Varaha had to rescue the earth in the middle of the first Manvantar, long before the scheduled devastation of the lower part of the universe. As indicated here, special circumstances sometimes lead to a universal flood during a Manvantara. The Matsya Purana relates that Swayambhuva Manu was once cursed by Agastya Muni to have the worlds inundated during his reign. When the earth was thus lost in the water, Lord Varaha appeared and lifted her out. In the 6th Manvantar, Chakshusha Manu was similarly cursed. According to the Vishnu Dharmottara and other Puranas, however, the flood at that time was due to the Supreme Lord's desire. Thus end the commentaries meant to satisfy the heart of Madhava Prabhu. Om Tat Sat. Okay? Did I answer your question? It answered it early on, actually, in the 3rd verse, so that was pretty good. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Govinda Dev, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath 18 Thakur. If you so desire, please attract us to the path of devotional service. Allow us to engage our senses fully in your service, and may we, by your grace, view the goal of devotional service and keep it always in our sights. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Vanchakalptaruscha kripasindamevacha Patitana Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. We'll take up our reading in the Bhagavatam after lunch with the killing of the demon Hiraṇyākṣa. Moving on, Krishna willing, to conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. And we'll also be aiming towards conversation between Manu and Kardama.